Last year in April, Dokibird raised over $200,000 for charity. Over $211,122 to be exact. And for many, it felt like a moment of healing, a huge achievement following an incredibly painful public period in her life. If you need a refresher, this all began in December 2023 when Doki was suspended from Nijisanji, and by February, she had officially graduated. But the situation became much more serious when, after her departure, Dokibird revealed that she had been silenced by the company. She shared that she had faced bullying, workplace harassment, and that, at her lowest point, she had attempted to take her own life. Twice. It was one of the most vulnerable things she had ever said. And instead of retreating, she chose to rebuild. She organized large-scale tournaments, collaborations, and in late February launched a charity auction with proceeds going to the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation, an organization supporting mental health research and treatment. The campaign was a massive success. It was a rare moment of light after a long stretch of darkness. But as it turns out, one item from that charity auction would eventually lead to a massive public backlash. A single item, a fully custom-built PC. And a year later, that item would be at the center of a controversy that challenged everything she had worked to rebuild. The auction had many items, fan art, collectibles, custom experiences, but one stood out, a high-end custom-built PC themed around Dokibird herself. The design was flashy, the artist was well known. The opening bid was at $3,500 and it sold for $6,600, the highest bid in the entire campaign. And then, nothing. No updates, no shipping, no confirmation, and no PC. And then in May of the following year, a video was released. And this was while Doki was dealing with a difficult medical emergency regarding her dog. The video laid out a case, piece by piece, claiming that the PC was never delivered, that the builder was never paid, and that Doki may have tried to avoid responsibility entirely. Within hours, conversations reignited, and people started asking questions. And the situation rapidly begun to unravel. The video was detailed. It had Discord messages, emails, DM screenshots, and a clear tone that framed everything as intentional avoidance. The takeaway? That Doki had made promises and failed to keep them. That the artist had been ignored or strung along, that the buyer never received what they paid for, and that this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was deliberate. There was a strong implication that she only issued a refund after the story begun gaining traction. But as viewers reviewed the video line by line and compared it to Doki's public statement, things didn't match up. In fact, some key informations were completely missing. A final quote of $14,000 USD for a custom PC build and a total of 280 hours of labor with nothing to show for. And without it, the story told in the video becomes completely different. Honestly, that reminds me of what happens when you go in a battle in Etheria Restart without thinking, which, tragically, is what half of you would do. This game launches June 5th, and it's a turn-based RPG where you build teams of animus, powerful, beautifully animated characters, and then command them in actual strategy-based combat. You're not just tapping auto and hoping for the best. You're controlling every move, combining skills, and yes, if your comp sucks, you will get wrecked. PvP is where it really shines. Enter the real-time arena where live band pick battles and global matchmaking make every match an actual test of strategy, not just gear checks. And the gacha system? No 50-50 heartbreaks, just 100 crystals to summon in the raid-up banner. That's it. No bait, no lies, it's almost suspiciously fair. You also get guild versus guild battles, deep progression system, a bunch of unreasonably attractive characters, and the Etheria World Summit, a global tournament where the winner walks away with a literal high-tech robot, like a real one. I don't even have one of those yet. And it all looks amazing, built in Unreal Engine with cinematic visuals that feel more like anime opening than a mobile game. So if you think you can out-strategize me, you can't. You totally can. Go and download Etheria Restart when it launches June 5th. Thank you Etheria Restarts for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you in the arena, at the top, obviously. Now back to the main content. The video opens up with a recap of the charity auction, immediately framing it as something that was very mismanaged. Katliente starts by calling the tea piping hot, proudly claiming she was giving this exclusive story, one that, according to her, hadn't been shared anywhere else. And honestly, there might have been a reason for that.
This is tea so piping hot, none of you guys have actually heard about it before because it has not been posted anywhere.
Katliente explains that she personally wrote the document, compiling the information herself. It introduces the key players, Dokibird, the auction winner, and the artist behind the PC, Celeste Fleurs, whose name we now know since clearly listed on both the mock-up in the document and the auction site. It also introduces Manager 1 and makes a point to highlight that the staff rotated 3 times throughout the ordeal, a detail that clearly contributed to the miscommunication and growing confusion. Additionally, Katliente, who wrote the Google document using information provided by a third party, likely the disgruntled artist behind the PC case, emphasizes that Dokibird had promised to pay the artist and cover the shipping fees to the buyer. The point is reinforced when Katliente highlights a key line from the management exchange in the Google Doc, underlining bold promises like Dokibird is 100% going to pay whatever you charge for the PC, and we don't have a super tight deadline for the project, so take all the time you want. I can already tell where things are going to go wrong just by hearing those lines. The next section of the Katliente video focuses heavily on one idea, that the PC auction listing used the wrong currency, and that this mistake drastically misrepresented the value of the item. The video argues that the PC was valued at 3,500 British pounds, but listed as 3,500 USD on the charity page. Katliente and the artist make this a major point in this video, the 3,500 being in the wrong currency, because it exposes a fundamental error in how the auction value was presented and justified, and it directly impacts how the artist's pricing was publicly perceived. There is about $1,000 difference between the two currencies. Additionally, the price came from Dokibird's manager looking up the parts on PC Part Picker at the time based off an old build from the artist, which is just a component cost estimate and doesn't include labor wages. But here's what the video doesn't tell you. The auction had a non-negotiable launch date, March 1st, 2024. At that point, the artist hadn't yet provided a finalized price or quote. So under pressure, the first manager, needing something to publish, grabbed pricing from a previous PC Part Picker build the artist had posted publicly. This was used as a placeholder reference so the item could go live on time. Not ideal, but it was a deadline crunch. Katliente repeatedly frames the PC listing as being grossly undervalued due to a currency misread, that the build was in pounds but listed in dollars. But that's simply not true. If you actually go back and check the archived PC Part Picker listing the manager used, and this is verifiable, the build was already listed in USD. Only 3 items were shown in British pounds, coming to a total of 335 British pounds. And if you convert 335 British pounds to USD using early 2024 rates, the difference is about $111. That's actually the total discrepancy. Not 3,500 British pounds versus 3,500 USD. Not thousands, just a minor sub $150 variance based on imported components. But in the video, that detail is used to create the illusion of a major pricing error, and it becomes one of the main pillars of the artist's final pricing argument. And here's when it gets even more interesting. After the item went live on Tiltify with that $3,500 estimate from PC Part Picker listed publicly, it was shared directly with the artist. They even retweeted the auction link. And at no point did they ever raise concerns about the listing price. There was no clarification about labor costs, no pushback about the estimate, no indication that anything had been misrepresented. It wasn't until much later, after delays had stacked up and trust had been broken down, that the artist began referring to the quote as a currency error and using it to justify the spike in cost, which raised the obvious questions. If this was such a critical mistake, why wasn't it brought before the bid started rolling in? And if the true price difference was only $111, how do we explain the final quote with 280 labor hours and over $14,000 in costs? This is where the video starts to fall apart. Not because of what it says, but because of what it doesn't. The next section of the Katliente video focuses on the breakdown in communication between the artist and Dokibird's team. It frames the situation as one-sided, that the artist kept reaching out while Doki's team kept ignoring them. It shows messages where the artist is asking for updates and clarity, and in contrast, suggests Doki's side went dark. That's a serious claim, one that defines the tone of this section. But once you look at the actual message logs, the picture becomes a lot more complicated. Let's start with the last confirmed communication from the artist as shown in the video. The date is March 1st, 2024. The artist finally responds on March 7, and after that, the next response by the artist comes 5 days later on March 12th. And then silence. There's a 7-day gap where they apologize for not responding, explaining they were recovering from an addiction. Sounds serious, and it is, if taken at face value. However, a public tweet from the artist dated March 4 states that they were dealing with a nicotine addiction. So let's step back and look at the timeline. The artist pitched themselves for this project around February 20th. By March 4th, they were tweeting publicly about quitting nicotine and haven't been clean for a month, which means that by February 4th, they had already quit. And by March 12th, they were apologizing for going silent, blaming their recovery process. But as we now know, the artist willingly took on the job knowing their personal situation. And let's be real, in most professional settings, quitting smoking wouldn't justify disappearing for over a week, especially when you're self-managing a 5-figure charity commission. And even then, Doki's management wasn't harsh in their response. They were understanding, they expressed empathy and patience, and they continued trying to make the project work, but the communication continued to stall. After March 21st, the artist stops responding again. The manager writes again on April 17th with no response, and then again on May 24th, simply to formally resign from working under Doki's brand. That's more than 2 months of near total silence. And this part of the story, the video glosses over it completely. It paints the artist as constantly reaching out and being ignored, when the actual message history shows period where they went silent for weeks at a time, even as the project stalled and costs climbed. Fast forward to June 8th, nearly 4 months after the auction ended. A new manager from Dokibird's team reaches out to the artist again. At this point, communication had already broken down multiple times. There had been a revolving door of managers and nothing had been delivered. But still, they tried. The email stated clearly that the item, the PC, was still unfulfilled. It acknowledged that the previous assistant had struggled to get updates from the artist, and it made one thing clear. They were trying to wrap up all open communications and bring closure to the auction. It's worth repeating, this was months after the charity stream ended. From February to June. That's 4 months of slow replies, silence, and rising confusion. And still, Doki's team hadn't closed the door. 10 days later, the artist responds. They explained that their lack of communication was due to health issues. Now in the video, this part of the email is blocked out by other information. It's not clear why, but it also makes it impossible to verify what health issues they were referring to or how it may have affected their ability to respond consistently for multiple months. Still, they don't back out. Instead, the artist expresses a strong desire to continue working with Doki's team and even proposes a rough production timeline, 6 weeks minimum and 12 weeks maximum. So as late as mid-June, despite everything that had happened, everyone still seemed willing to work together. The tone is pleasant. But then 12 weeks came and went, and still no PC, no update, no delivery, not even a message. At that point, Doki had run out of options, so that's when she decided to step in. After months of rotating managers and unanswered emails, Dokibird made the decision to personally reach out both via email and Twitter DM. And here's what she said. Hi, I've sent a DM about this on Twitter, but I've been told by my staff that you have been MIA regarding the charity PC. I just want to know what is going on and why this was happening. The winner of the charity auction has been unhappy with the wait, and I was pulled in to fix the issues as it has grown bigger than it should be. Just a calm, personal message from a creator trying to reopen a stalled conversation and give the project one last chance. And what happened next? The artist met with Manager 3. Right away, the conversation feels off here. Manager 3 doesn't seem to understand that the artist was expecting to be paid for the project at first. One of their first messages reads, "I'm unsure how exactly this came to be and why Doki has to pay this out of her own pocket. And the item isn't donated, but this was before my time." It's clear by the time the manager stepped in, they were piecing things together from fragments. They referenced the original estimate. The PC case had a fair market value of 3,500 USD at a time, from about a year ago. Then they mentioned something new, that the auction winner may have had additional requests they were personally willing to pay for. Finally, the manager tries to move the conversation towards a resolution, something practical, something that could still be delivered. At the moment, we need to find a solution for what you can deliver for that amount currently, what the auction winner is happy with, and what we can do to remedy the situation, as one-year-old specs can be an issue. Even after everything, the team wasn't shutting the project down. They were still trying to salvage it and still trying to communicate. They were still trying to find a way forward, even if the foundation was already cracked. At this point, Katliente shift focus to Manager 3's wording, suggesting they were trying to guilt the artist into donating the item rather than being compensated for their work.
Guilting other people to try to donate stuff to charity, I just don't like that personally.
It's a strong accusation, but as the old saying goes, never attribute to malice what you can attribute to miscommunication or something like that. It's very possible the manager, newly added to the project and unfamiliar with its early details, was simply confused. They may not have realized whether the PC was a donated contribution, a commission, or something in between. Because, again, no contract was signed. No clear expectations were ever documented. Then the video moves into a segment where Katliente explains that the artist eventually submitted a PDF that included a breakdown of part costs, additional features the bidder had requested, and a calculated labor fee based on the London national living wage. Katliente emphasizes that this wage was actually below the artist's normal rate and frames it as evidence that the artist was undercharging due to the unclear communication and pressure to quote-unquote fix the PC situation themselves. She writes that this came from a lack of transparency around budgeting and that the artist felt personally responsible to untangle the mess left behind, mostly because of the originally wrongly priced $3,000 USD fair market value at the auction. When Manager 3 finally receives the artist's full quote, he's surprised. The price is no longer close to $3,500 listed on the original auction page, but it has now jumped to around $7,200, nearly double the original estimate, and more than the final auction bid itself, which was $6,600. The manager doesn't shut things down immediately though, but the tone is cautious. He replies, "Let me run it by Doki and staff and see what would be the best choice to continue." At this point, the artist explains the pricing discrepancy by circling back to the currency mix-up argument, the same one we debunked earlier. They claim that the original 3,500 British pounds was listed as USD, and that this misalignment is the reason the current quote seems inflated. But again, if you look at the archive PC part picker listing, we know that the original estimate was already in USD, with only 355 British pounds, which accounts for a difference of just $111 USD. Still, the artist does something worth noting here. They try to source cheaper parts through their personal connections in an effort to bring down cost. It's a move that shows initiative and a willingness to help the project move forward. But here, Katliente interjects again, suggesting that the artist shouldn't be asking for favors from their personal network.
Again, this is like extra stuff the artist is doing on top of it. Like flexing your personal relationships to try to like pull strings and get things done is not an expectation that would happen in scenarios like this. Like this is like going above and beyond.
Implying that it's unprofessional, even in a charity setting. But this is where interpretation gets tricky. In many creative industries, including freelance, tech design or builds like this, connections are part of the job. Having access to discounted parts or faster shipping isn't unethical. It's often why certain freelancers are hired in the first place. That doesn't make the practice automatically wrong. It makes it situational and entirely dependent on context. Then comes the next major issue, shipping. Manager 3 already concerned that the total build price has exceeded the actual auction revenue wants to confirm there won't be any additional hidden cost. But the artist is clearly frustrated at this point. They remind the manager that Doki had previously said she would cover shipping, and clarified that the current quote doesn't include packaging, taxes, or logistics, just the hardware and labor. From a business standpoint, the manager pushes back. This doesn't make any financial sense at this point. The item now costs more than what the auction brought in. He even says bluntly that at this rate, they might as well just donate the full auction amount directly to charity, rather than continue to pour more money into a project that spiraled completely out of scope. Still, he doesn't make the final call. He ends the conversation by saying, "I'll talk to Doki and see what we can do." And with that, the situation is hanging by a thread. Then comes what might be the most chaotic part of this entire saga. In an attempt to streamline communication, a group chat is created that includes the buyer, the PC builder, Doki, and her manager. The goal is simple: to finalize things, to let the buyer speak directly with the artist about what parts they want, any custom color choices, and confirm their shipping details, so this whole situation can finally move forward. But that's not what happens. What should have been a focused, clear conversation derails almost immediately. The chat quickly shifts away from specs and shipping and into a heated discussion about unpaid labor, fair wages, budget transparency, and whether a portion of the money should be considered a charity donation instead of payment. Tension starts rising, the buyer is caught in the middle, the manager's trying to mediate, and Doki, after watching this go sideways, finally speaks. "Hi, sorry for the late reply to all of this. I'll be reading through the replies. I'll be handling it personally instead of my staff since they're all busy, and it was my fault the PC stuff got delayed since I didn't realize the miscommunication got this bad until I was dragged back in, notified about it a few weeks ago. I really apologize again for the delays in this auction item. If there's something you need from me and I don't reply back within 48 hours, just add me again because my messages got super swamped every day. Since I don't think I'll be needing another PC, we can allocate the funds to getting buyer PC made with the parts they want. Unless you like to have us share similar PCs, I also don't mind as a special feature. Please feel free to let me know what you prefer." At this point, the group chat is tense and directionless. Both the buyer and the artist seem to be waiting on Doki for a clear budget. But from Doki's perspective and her team's, they're still waiting on the artist to provide a final project estimate before any budget could even be confirmed. It's a total stalemate. No one wants to move forward without knowing the numbers, but no one's providing the numbers in a way that's usable. And that's when the artist breaks. What follows is a long message, a full-blown rant. They write, "At this point, I'm finding it hard to continue dedicating time to the project without Doki's personal involvement. She's the only one who can make key decisions on behalf of her business, and her input is critical to moving things along. Silent, I keep sensing that this project might not make financial sense, and I'm genuinely concerned about the risk of not being compensated for the hours I've already put in. Since we don't have any form of contract yet, I haven't been able to establish standard creative industry practices, such as a kill fee. So far, I've already put in a significant time with the concept art, drafting of proposals, communications, but without a clear budget, I've been shooting in the dark and undercharging my services in the process in an attempt to make this work without undefined parameters. I really hope that you can understand that I can't put in any more hours or change the cost breakdown I've already given until I actually know what the upper limit financial constraints are and what the Doki team is doing to make this work. I want to feel like we're aligned and given our best effort to deliver a lovely product to a client who has been waiting for a year." Everything they describe, the lack of contract, the unclear budget, the missed deadlines, is exactly what Dokibird and her team have been dealing with too. At this point, Dokibird responds stating that she's willing to raise the budget to 7.4k USD for the project. She makes it clear that she's personally willing to cover an additional 3 to 4k out of pocket, far above the 3.5k originally allocated for the parts when the item was first listed. But here, the buyer has more questions. He wants to know exactly how much he needs to contribute for his upgraded PC parts. Doki had already said she was willing to increase the overall budget, but he's trying to clarify. What was the original budget supposed to be? Was it 3.5k total, or was that just for the parts? He's essentially saying if the actual budget was $7,000 this entire time, and Doki's team is only realizing it now, then he's not getting any benefit from the added compensation, the extra money that Doki was willing to pay because he waited this long. It's a fair question, but Katliente spins this part differently. She frames the buyer's message as him advocating for the artist to be paid a fair and livable wage. But that's not exactly what's happening. Yes, he does mention wanting the artist to be paid a livable wage, but that's not the point he's trying to make. What he's actually saying is, how much does he need to pay out of pocket for his upgraded specs? Doki has already offered to raise the budget, but he needs to know where that budget starts. Was it a 3.5k total or a 3.5k plus labor? And honestly, can I just point out how the way the labor costs keep piling on, it's almost comical. It went from labor estimated at auction time plus post-auction labor plus admin fees plus hassle fees? For what exactly? Because from the initial mockup to now, there's still no case, no PC, no product, nothing. Just spreadsheets. Then the conversation moves on, and the artist makes a point of saying that they've been undercharging their labor rate throughout the entire project. They explain that they've been quoting at £12.85 per hour, which is the London living wage, just to keep the project moving. But according to them, their actual base rate should be £32 an hour. So now we're talking about a project that's already well past its budget, behind schedule, and with no product delivered. And we're being told it's been running at a discount the whole time. Manager 3 then steps in and explains that Manager 1 hadn't set up the auction in a conventional way, which ended up putting a lot of financial burden on Dokibird personally. He's upfront about it, saying that even at this stage, they still don't know what the final cost of the PC would be. It could be $5,000, it could be $10,000, and without a fixed number, they can't move forward. So he tags both the artist and their assistant, asking them to provide a clear fixed price estimate, something that includes everything they would normally charge for a build like this, all labor, materials, and service included. He even emphasizes that they shouldn't underprice themselves and apologizes if anything he said earlier made it seem like they were being asked to cut corners. But once again, Katliente reframes this, saying it felt like a guilt trip from the manager.
It feels a bit guilt trippy.
Then came the most widely criticized moment in this entire saga. The artist submitted 2 quotes. The first, labeled option 1, was based on their full standard wage. It totaled a staggering $11,133 with $6,610 of that being in labor alone, calculated as 4 full weeks of 40 hours each. The PC parts themselves were capped at $4,006, meaning nearly 3/4 of the total cost was just labor. And the worst part, that price wasn't fixed. The artist stated it could increase further depending on complexity. In addition, they submitted a second option, based on the rate they had originally quoted, the minimum London living wage. That version came to $8,814, still over budget, but at least closer to the 7.4k Dokibird had said she was willing to pay out of pocket to help resolve the situation. But by this point, the damage was done. Doki then sends a message explaining how this whole mess was started. This is where she admits she had to pay out of pocket for multiple auction items, all because Manager 1 mishandled several of the listings. The artist then responds and walks back their earlier quote. She says that after much consideration, they can no longer accept the rates offered in option 2. In short, they're only willing to move forward with the $11,000 USD quote. So why even offer option 2 in the first place? Then they go on to say, while I'm sympathetic to the challenges you faced with previous management, I feel that I've been placed in a position to undercharge to align with your staff's current expectations. This has put me at a disadvantage, as the rate I initially proposed, option 2, doesn't reflect ethical standards for creative work. I appreciate your staff's apology for the miscommunication. I instead can shift my focus towards providing the best of my professional services. Making sure that I'm paid a fair rate in line with creative industries is tantamount to delivering a great project, and I'm committed to collaborating with you and buyer on this. Going forward, I like to ensure I can feel comfortable and confident in my professional skills. I'll be providing my standard work contract and pro forma invoice, which reflects ethical pricing and cost estimates to the best of my ability. I should also let you know that I have a window of availability to complete this work, as I have other bookings scheduled for Q2 and my rate is due to increase in the new financial year. I estimate that the project will take around a month to complete, so ideally, if we can get everything agreed, signed, and started by EOW, I'll help make sure we get the project done in a timely manner and still have wiggle room in case of any unforeseen delays. Instead of lowering my rates on the invoice, I'm discounting the additional fees, admin, extra hours, etc. that would have typically been charged for. Then Doki, while on vacation, responds. She and the artist go back and forth about the pricing of the build. Doki explains that she was fine accommodating option 2 even after the quote shifted from USD to British pounds, which she was willing to work with. But now that the artist is only willing to move forward with option 1, she says the price has increased dramatically. She asks if there's any middle ground they can find. Doki also notes that she's trying to resolve this during her first vacation in years, and apologizes if anything came off wrong since she's replying from her phone. If I'm misunderstanding from what I read, option 2 was proposed as a way to help out charity and for a good cause in the initial planning for the auction. She ends by saying she understands if a middle ground isn't possible and if the artist isn't comfortable continuing. She's okay with them walking away. If that's the case, she and her team will look for another builder to finally deliver the PC the buyer has been waiting for. Kat then reads Doki's messages and sharply critiques her for using the vacation as a shield.
I've actually been trying to fix this during my first vacation in years. This to me is really gross. I want to be empathetic. Again, this wouldn't be an issue if you responded faster before your vacation. This to me reads very manipulative. That's not the buyer or the artist problem. I'm gonna be blunt. I don't care if it was your vacation. Like, it sucks that you had to work on your vacation. You wouldn't have had to work on your vacation if this was solved earlier. It taking this long is partially your fault. Being on vacation. How is this the fault of buyer and the artist? That is between you and your team.
But maybe Katliente should take her own advice, as the last time she faced a controversy, she responded by mentioning that she was on vacation 3 times in a single tweet. This is also one criticism I forgot to address. I am on vacation. I have been for 2 weeks. I pre-filmed 3 to 4 weeks of my videos because I am on vacation. My daily tweets going out are pre-scheduled for a month in advance because I am on vacation. Whoops, I mean 4 times. It also says in my Twitter nickname that I am on vacation, although I did leave earlier than the July 27 date listed. But back to the video. The artist explains that quote number 2 was lower because she came up with the reduced wage idea after feeling pressured during her conversation with manager 3, who at the time had suggested she donate the PC to make the build, labor, and shipping fit within the original auction amount. She brings back the point the buyer made earlier, that the auction price shouldn't define the project's budget, and uses it to reinforce her stance. Doki responds by explaining that the charity auction was structured so that the base listing price should have been reflective of the actual cost, both labor and materials, and that this was something the artist had not been informed of, and what previous management was supposed to tell all creators, which the majority were made aware of, but some select few weren't, including this item. The artist replies, "This is where your previous staff made the error." Doki then continues, "That's why a lot of items were different in pricing and wasn't just $1 to start off, as all creators were supposed to inform me of what the base price was, and why the item started off as 3K for the starting bid. as I was informed that was the base price to set the auction item as. This was the only item where the commissioner piece is higher than what the item auction ended as. So that's why I wish to find a middle ground if possible, but if not and you feel uncomfortable, I understand. I just feel uncomfortable the most that the charity received less than what the item is going to be. And that was not something that should not have happened, and one of the reasons why the previous management in charge of the charity got let go for mishandling it. The artist responds, "The charity receiving less than what the item is going to be is regrettable, and I share your feelings. If the price hadn't been valued the way that it was, we could have perhaps avoided that outcome. It makes me sad that's not the case because it would have been for a good cause that we both really believe in. I want you to know that I'm not upping the cost just for the sake of it. I have to work from a standard rate to be able to make ends meet, and I'm hopeful you can understand. If it would help, I can share the past invoice from the build that this PC is based from. It's about 2 years old and I was paid both in hardware plus 7.1k British pounds to make the build. The hardware itself amounted to 3.5k, so the total came around to 10.6k British pounds." And Doki answers, "I would like to find a middle ground as I really cannot believe in or have faith to have the item be extremely more than what the charity received. If we could find a middle ground for this, maybe donate some of the money to the charity itself as well where it is around that, but a portion of that goes to the charity." The artist then sends an updated invoice applying a 3,840 British pound discounts, bringing the total build price down to 8,622.97 British pounds. However, that total is still higher than the initial quote number 2, which had been valued at 6,826 British pounds. Then comes an awkward moment. The artist assistants start asking how much of the buyer's 6.6k actually went to the charity. Dokibird responds clearly, all of it went to the charity, as the entire payment was processed through Tiltify. Doki then repeats that she feels uncomfortable with the fact that the charity received significantly less than what the auction item ended up costing. Katliente pushes back on this in her document, writing, "This feels unfair. While the sentiment of wanting the charity to receive a fair amount is noble, and a suggestion at a compromise is not Doki's money to give, this would be implying that the artists should undercharge themselves even more just to accommodate the miscommunicated budget." Manager 3 starts pushing back on the quotes. "We have received a few different quotes by now, and all quotes have a big difference in pricing and keep going up. When we started, you asked for our budget and we said 7k USD, and now we're getting a quote for 15k USD. Excluding shipping and taxes. Could you show me where you and old management agreed on the designer standard fee and what has been delivered on that? Where does this number come from? Perhaps it's just me being lost, but usually quotes are provided. You agree on a quote and things get made and paid in set agreed time based on the quote. Or am I missing something?" Unfortunately, the next screenshot does not show the full extent of the artist's response. It would have been important to see where previous management allegedly agreed to the terms mentioned. Instead, the document only includes the manager's reply to the artist's message with the original message missing. It's unclear whether the screenshots were trimmed this way by the artist who provided them, or if Katliente herself chose to present them this way, despite potentially having access to the full, unedited exchange. At this point, the artist's assistant comes out swinging against Manager 3. "I'm sorry, this has not been sitting well with me today, and I have to speak up. I feel this is a horrible pointed remark to make, Manager 3, and is wildly inappropriate and unprofessional. Doki and artists have stepped up to own and apologized multiple times for missteps on both sides, and these things have been heard, understood, and sympathized with in order to draw a line under it, and to see if there is a solution to be made with the regrettable circumstance we now have. Giving explanation as to why certain things happened the way they did does not equate to making excuses for it or trying to absolve blame. I think that's simple enough to understand. I really feel like the negotiations that Doki and artists were engaging in have really been undercut now, and that we've reached a point where all discussions should be left to them with very minimal interruptions. At Doki, I'm sorry if my short question about the charity money was rude and out of hand. I was curious if the auction was done as all proceeds get donated, or if it was 100% of the profits, since that would have made a huge difference in how much money you'd be shortfalling for this item. I should have elaborated." As tensions rise on all sides, the artist formally requests payment for their work. Good morning, everyone. This isn't a message I'd like to be sending, but at this point I feel I have no choice. After all this hard work without payment, I feel my efforts and work have been consistently undervalued, and I'm formally requesting to be paid for the work I have already completed. I do not feel comfortable proceeding with this build further until I am, at a minimum, compensated for the time and effort I have already put into this project. Please find attached below the estimated invoice for my services if you wish to proceed with the build. The estimated total required for this project will be 8,622 British pounds. But most surprisingly, she then states that if Dokibird's team wants to continue the project with another PC builder, she would require a 25% cancellation fee, citing a flat license agreement she believes she is owed for creating the PC design. That totals an astronomical sum of 3,040 British pounds. Alternatively, she says, if you prefer to cancel entirely, the amount payable will be 3,840 British pounds for services already rendered, and 6,600 USD refunded to Dokibird. Again, this is not a message I want to send, but I truly feel like I have exhausted all other options. I do not feel like I have been listened to or communicated with in a way I expected from a major project such as this. I am happy to discuss this further and clarify any items. However, I believe I should be paid for the work I have currently completed for free. I cannot continue further until the contract is signed and returned and the services rendered so far are paid in full. Additionally, I want to clarify something regarding the financial aspect of this auction. While I understand that this was a charity project, I recently looked into the tax implications of charitable donations in Canada. Typically, Canada offers tax relief on charitable donations. This part hits especially hard for Dokibird, someone who's consistently been generous in her projects. She expresses feeling deeply hurt that anyone would think she's doing this for a tax write-off or personal gain. At this point, Manager 3 has had enough. Please inform me what services was rendered for the 3.4k quote and what was the formal agreement. We will not be planning on using the design for the winner's PC, so I would like to know what this entails, as it's almost the same price as the auction itself for a non-delivered item and a mock-up/quote. And he's right, the final cancellation fee the artist submitted amounts to $5,099 US, almost the same as the $6,600 auction bid itself. And on top of that, the Dokibird teams still needs to commission a new custom PC for the buyer. He continues, there's been zero communication during the project, no quotes, no asking for feedback or approval. We'd be willing to discuss some sort of payment, but nothing has been shown or delivered from our POV at the moment. And pricing seems to go up every time we're talking, so please provide me sufficient evidence of work being finished on your end within the next few hours or so, because at the moment I have zero to go on but your word that things have been completed. This is usually not how to do business. Complete things without a quote, asking a pretty high amount, more than the charity auction fair market value, and then asking for the work that hasn't been communication on. Then implying we are unprofessional and that the streamer might be pocketing cash, whilst the bidder, her fan, not yours, is still in the conversation, and then asking to add him back into this conversation whilst we already decided to not continue from the provided quotes. Katliente then argues that the artist deserves to be paid even for the unused design, which, to be fair, is a point I agree with. But the quoted licensing fee here feels excessive, even when compared to standard corporate rates. One point that hasn't really been brought up is that licensing fees typically scale based on manufacturing scope. One-off commissions, limited runs, and mass-produced items all fall under very different pricing models. These fees are usually the trade-off for not receiving a percentage of sales, and they tend to scale with how many units are expected to sell. So if this is a licensing price for a one-on-one PC, it raises a serious question. How much does Celeste Fleurs charges for a PC design that's actually meant to be sold and reproduced? Katliente also adds that client communication is labor and should be factored into the artist's hourly rate, just like any other part of the creative process. But in most freelance commission-based work, basic communication is factored into the base cost. You don't get billed just for replying to a client. Also, This was a charity auction. Adding communication fees to a chaotic, miscommunicated, charity-focused event just feels off. The optics are bad, even if the justification is technically sound. And the artist applied to a call-out tweet that said it was a paid opportunity, not a custom agency contract. So it's weird to treat it like a full-scope enterprise job with layered billing. Management and the artist go back and forth again, with the artist standing firm on their rates and management continuing to push back. The artist then provides screenshots of their early communication with Manager 1, where he states, Doki is 100% going to pay whatever you charge for the PC. It kind of feels like the artist took that line quite literally and ran with it. Manager 3 then responds by saying Manager 1 had no mandate to claim that. A debate follows over who is actually responsible for fulfilling the project. Manager 3 argues that this was still Manager 1's responsibility, while the artist pushes back, stating that Manager 3 contacted them directly with the intention of picking the project back up, implying they had taken ownership of it. Manager 3 then questions the artist's time estimate, saying, so far my calculations say you spent 2 to 3 full times a week creating this mockup, and I found that hard to believe considering Doki had just debuted around that time, and mockups usually take 2 to 4 days, not full 8-hour work days. He then clarifies a critical point. They're not the same company that initially contracted Celeste. The original team, Dokibird Production and Stakeholders, was a separate legal entity that wasn't owned by Doki. That team was eventually let go as Doki had been taken advantage of, and she later founded her own new company. Manager 3 explains that legally they're a different entity entirely and therefore have no formal agreement with the artist and are not obligated to fulfill the original arrangement. That said, he still expresses a desire to find a resolution even if they're not legally bound to do so, despite how strained the conversation has become. He goes on to say that the old company has made multiple attempts to reconnect with the artist early on, but those efforts failed for reasons that were out of their control. At that point, things were put on hold, not because of Dokibird Production. He notes that the artist has taken very little accountability for that gap in communication, especially when it comes to charging full service rates. The implication is clear. If any client had to wait this long, it would be completely reasonable for them to be unhappy and start looking for a solution. Even once negotiations resumed, despite the tension, Manager 3 points out that the artist continued to charge far above fair market value, especially for what ultimately amounted to a mock-up. And then he asked a question that cut straight to the heart of the issue. What would have happened if we did not get in touch? The artist responds, my services include but are not limited to the mock-up design that was created on a rush turnaround. I've provided a breakdown of the additional labor and administrative work in the spreadsheet, being as transparent as possible about my rates and costs. The proposals, updated hardware list, cost breakdown calculations, project planning / coordination, and other documents are part of the services you requested. You are correct that there are no hidden costs involved. Additionally, they say they consulted a charity manager who works with Tiltify to better understand the situation. According to them, industry standards support that they should be paid for the custom PC design as agreed, regardless of the charity context, since the charity itself had no role in managing the auction. They also argued that Dokibird's current team is still responsible for fulfilling the project and that the amount due reflects fair compensation for the work already done in good faith. She adds, the bottom line here is that I'm not going to accept any less than my industry standard rate, and I'm not interested in undercutting other independent artists in the industry. I understand if you'd like to pursue this commission at a different quoted rate, but my compensation is non-negotiable. I'm unfortunately not interested in any further drawn-out dialogue and therefore will not be responding to anything short of agreeing to an offer. Thank you again. My apologies for any confusion in our time reaching this result. The last screenshots from management, including in the Google document, is this one, where Manager 3 writes, I wish to continue conversations, but without concrete evidence, as requested 3 to 4 times before, I cannot go back to the team and even start the further conversation of possible compensation. We requested several things and these items have yet to be provided to us. He adds, the team also asked why you did not re-establish communication after losing contact upon your own return, and if you did, why was everything put on hold? However, nor Katliente or the artist provided any proof of response or showcase of the items requested. And then things get even weirder. Katliente shifts focus to a set of DMs between the artist and the buyer. The buyer reaches out, asking if the artist has ever seen the new builder's work before. The artist responds and then proceeds to talk down the new builder and criticize Dokibird and her team right in front of Doki's own fan. Oh my god, it's about to be May and you only just got the builder? They've made you wait a whole 5 months. I have to laugh at how ridiculous that is. Goodness me, that really is dreadful. I've never heard of this person before. They don't have any other social media than a YouTube channel. They look like they're a small creator. But it's a bit weird if they're a creator and have like no other socials other than a throne wish list and an email, which is a Gmail domain. They don't seem to have much of a portfolio for PC builds is something I'm noticing. If even an established company partnered with a famous VTuber can't fulfill her request for as cheap as she wants it to be, and she won't pay me to do it like she was supposed to, bit concerned about this creator being exploited with how much this should cost. Doki shouldn't be trying to undercut industry prices as one of the most famous VTubers in the world. Big yikes. Then the buyer tells Celeste that the new PC builder is actually doing it for free, saying, "You were right, they did shop around for the cheapest they could get, aka free." Katliente ends her document and video by stating that the artist has not been compensated for their labor and that the auction winner still hasn't received their PC. All in all, it's a messy situation, one where both sides ended up feeling exploited. But there's more. Oddly enough, the last recorded messages between the artist and the buyer were dated 29th of April. By tracing the Google Docs edit history throughout the URL, it turns out that the artist and Katliente had actually been planning to write this document as early as March 8th, weeks before some of the final messages even happened. Maybe it was to apply public pressure on Dokibird, or maybe it was to paint her as a manipulator, a scammer, or a bad faith actor. Take your pick. Which unfortunately kind of worked. When the video came out, a handful of Dokibird's aunties quickly jumped on the situation, using it as an excuse to accuse her and taking Katliente's word at face value. So, the day after the video was uploaded, Dokibird issued a response. She starts by saying, "To everyone following the situation regarding the charity auction, I want to address the claims that have been circulating, particularly in a recent video. This has been an incredibly difficult experience, but I believe the full story deserves to be heard." Dokibird opens by acknowledging that the auction was mishandled and apologizes directly to the winner for the delays and confusion. She says she takes responsibility, but also reveals there were serious behind-the-scene challenges that hadn't been disclosed until now. Then she drops a bombshell. "I feel that it's time that I share this with everyone, as I have come to terms with what has occurred in the summer. At the time this auction was concluding, I was in the middle of a serious and distressing transition. My previous management team had taken full control of my brand, and I was actively working with lawyers and police to reclaim ownership of Dokibird. During this time, I was also forced to move out of my home under police supervision, a situation so severe it required formal reports and the help of a personal friends and staff. It was during this incredibly turbulent time that the charity item fell into the hands of my team while I was trying to survive and restart my life from the ground up. I won't go into too much detail, but this screenshot is a snapshot of how bad it was." Dokibird explains that she and her team were overwhelmed, focused on rebuilding the business, and received no follow-up from the other side, leaving her uncertain about how to move forward with the situation. She explains that she eventually had to step in to handle the PC build herself after delays continued, but claims the builder stopped following up, which forced her to reach out again after months of silence. She clarifies that the auction starting bid was always meant to reflect the full cost of the item, as was standard across all listings. She writes, "I was confused when the PC build kept increasing in quoted price from 6k to 8k to 12k, then 14k, with no consistent rationale. I even offered to pay more than the original bid due to the delays, but the shifting figures and eventually threat of daily penalties for missing an arbitrary deadline left me overwhelmed and unsure if I could continue the partnership. The builder provided irrational hours in the time log, asking for obscene amounts and services we never agreed on. Eventually, I was told I'd owe a 4K cancellation fee, yet I had not agreed to any finalized scope or cost. There was no contract signed between me, Dokibird, and them directly. Then she attached the final quote Celeste had sent her team. $14,964. That was the final quote for a custom PC build. And of that amount, $11,000 was just labor, nearly 3 times the cost of the actual hardware. The breakdown is even more outrageous. 4 weeks of 40 hours work week for project production, plus 3 more weeks of 40-hour prep time before the build even begun. None of it makes sense. And yet, despite all of that, Dokibird was still willing to pay the full amount, no questions asked, as long as the artist could provide any proof of labor. The artist did send over a timesheet claiming 120 hours of work, but Doki and her team had repeatedly requested a time-lapse video of the PC build, something the builder had originally said existed. However, after multiple follow-ups, the video was never delivered. To Doki, this felt like the builder was acting in bad faith, not just towards her, but toward the auction winner as well. Weirdly enough, Celeste often takes time lapses of her work. She even replied to a comment on a 2-year-old rig saying it took her 4 times longer to build because she was filming the entire process. I don't know, maybe that's where the 280 hours came from. Then Dokibird's team also sent Celeste an email stating that she never made it clear she was charging them for the quote itself and for every interaction with the team. They reiterated the repeated requests for time-lapse footage or any proof of labor and questioned her claim that she wanted to be paid for a mock-up created nearly a year ago, especially since that item wasn't listed on her timesheet and wasn't charged for separately. There were just too many things that didn't add up. Dokibird says she was also deeply hurt by the false accusation that she was pocketing charity money or doing it for a tax write-off. She clarifies that all funds went directly to the charity through Tiltify and that she personally covered artist payments and additional costs out of her own pocket. She explains that she had to step back due to the emotional toll. She was on a long-awaited vacation in Japan dealing with food poisoning, but was still trying to resolve everything quietly behind the scenes. Eventually, she spent nearly $10,000 ordering PC parts with a new builder, but after Amazon canceled the parts order, she and the auction winner mutually agreed on a 7.5K payout to settle the matter. Dokibird states that the video was posted 2 days after she had already paid the auction winner and considered the matter resolved. She claims the video description and pinned comment were edited afterward to acknowledge the payment, but in a way that falsely implied she only paid because of public pressure, which she says is completely untrue. Additionally, she had initially avoided sharing screenshots because she generally hoped to resolve things privately, but now feels forced to speak up and defend herself. She emphasizes her track record of supporting and paying artists, acknowledges her personal missteps, and says that being labeled as manipulative is heartbreaking. Moving forward, she says she'll be stepping back from direct negotiations to avoid further misunderstandings, and asks people to consider the full context, not just the viral version of events. And after her statement was released, past artists she had worked with came out in droves to support her, many corroborating that she's always been professional, generous, and great to work with. There's also so many contradictions in what the artist claims to have done, which is why it feels like they're not being fully transparent with their hours and rates demanded. The timesheet only lists 120 hours of work during the first 3 weeks, but if you look closely at the dates, they're all from 2025, well after the project was supposedly already underway. The problem here, and Manager 3 brings this up, is that the artist claims her rushed mock-up job is part of the service rendered, and that's why she's invoicing them. But the timesheets, which are supposed to show which weeks she worked, don't include it at all. And as the manager points out, how does that make sense? To add to that, if we go further back, on February 28th at 17:29, the builder and Manager 1 agreed to move forward with the project. Then, that same day at 17:44, the builder sent the mockup. She sent them the finished mockup in less than 15 minutes after agreeing to take on the project. So already there are two contradictions or outright lies in what Celeste Fleurs has been telling Dokibird and her team. Did it only take her 15 minutes to make the mockup? What the hell happened here? Now, if we establish a timeline of events, it seems like it went on like this. January 13 to 31, the artist logs hours and starts charging for that period. January 14, first contact is made via Twitter DMs. January 16 to 18, Manager 3 and Celeste discuss pricing for the build. Manager 3 already seems hesitant and was considering turning her down. January 19, Dokibird is added to the group chat, and even then, she still doesn't agree with the pricing. January 19 to 30, more back and forth, mostly disagreements over cost. And January 30, the artist drops a calculation table in Discord quoting 5.1k British pounds for pre-production and references January 31st, a date that hadn't even happened yet. To this day, both Manager 3 and Doki have said they're still confused where the 120 hours came from, since they originally assumed it was for the 2024 mockup. Because honestly, how else do you justify $5,100 for a few Discord messages? And for context, on January 13th, Celeste asked for the manager's Discord handle. Doki only responded on January 14 with the info. So between the 13th and 14th, there was no further communication. They weren't even friends on Discord yet. Which means Celeste literally charged Doki $340 for those 3 messages. It's just so hard to believe that the artist is being truthful, especially when even a self-proclaimed amateur has completed similar custom PC builds with 3D printed decor and vinyl designed panels in just 75 hours. But that's not all that happened, because what Katliente did next was even worse. One part of Katliente's video that was initially overlooked but later sparked major backlash online was when she referenced a past incident where she had uploaded a video that clickbaited creator Alicia X Def's cancer for views.
By my editor, it was on my YouTube channel as unlisted. Then the VTuber had made a post writing, "I feel really uncomfortable with people making videos about my situation." News YouTuber specifically, which includes me. And I saw that and I was like, oh shit, okay, not gonna post the video.
Kat uses this story to make a broader point about creator accountability, saying that even if you didn't personally cause the issue, if your name, brand, auction, or platform is attached to it, you're responsible for it. She draws a clear parallel. Just like she claims she took responsibility for a mistake made by her editor, she argues that Doki should have stepped in sooner, instead of distancing herself from the fallout caused by her management team. Except, Kat never really took accountability for what she did to Alicia. She paid her off, deleted Alicia's comment from her video, and then went on Twitter to defend herself, doubling down even rather than owning up to it. Alicia even responded directly to that Katliente tweet and had previously uploaded a fuller explanation of what happened on her YouTube channel. So let's take a look at it. Initially, Alicia was going to let it go, but after seeing that Kat brought this incident up again, this time in a comment under her Dokibird charity video, using it to frame herself as someone who takes responsibility, Alicia decided it was time to speak out and reveal what actually happened. Katliente had posted a video titled "VTuber with Cancer Got Hacked," featuring Alicia's face and flames in the thumbnail, a move that caused her massive distress. Even after Alicia publicly stated that she didn't want her illness used for content, Kat still published the video, then later changed the title to VTuber in Remission, which only added to the misinformation. Kat later claimed that the video was uploaded by mistake, blaming it on her editor. But Alicia shows this was false, pointing out that Kat herself responded to comments and manually changed the title. Alicia also reveals that the video was live for over 24 hours, not the 6 hours Kat claimed. While Alicia acknowledges that Kat did eventually take the video down and paid her the ad revenue, it only happened after backlash, and she believes Kat never truly took accountability and is now trying to rewrite the narrative. She makes it clear that she does not want her name or illness brought up again, in any context, by Katliente.
And the fact that she mentioned me in her comment section of the video pissed me off. To act like she took accountability when she took zero in my situation. And the only reason why it got swept under the rug is because I didn't say anything.
One part that was particularly heartbreaking is when Alicia says that week was one of the worst she'd ever experienced.
That I didn't talk about was, it's so hard when you see a bunch of fucking comments, and this was getting like hundreds of comments at the time during this video being uploaded, of people being like, oh my god, Alicia has cancer? And then she changed the title hours later. Like 5-6 hours later, she changed the title to be VTuber in remission. Because she replied to someone's comment saying, oh shit, I didn't know she beat cancer. But I didn't. I had my main mass removed, and I still had 2 malignant spots left. So she changed the title to VTuber in remission. And then I started getting bombarded with people congratulating me. And I just broke down. Because it's like, I was so overwhelmed because I've never wanted to be in a situation where I get brought up in this way and then have to explain, hey, no, I'm still fighting. Like, it was one of the worst weeks that I've gone through as a content creator.
Imagine the strength and courage it takes to fight for your life, only to be put in a situation where people are congratulating you and you have to explain that it was all a misinformation from a YouTube video. Just awful. My heart goes out to Alicia. So, just to recap for those who are confused, here's how this whole situation unraveled. Katliente first brought up Alicia in her Dokibird commentary video, using Alicia's cancer clickbait incident as an example of her own accountability. Problem is, she left out critical context. Viewers noticed, then in the comment of that same video, Kat doubled down, continuing to frame herself as a responsible party. I cited the same thing from a personal experience in the video. There was a video I made about a VTuber with cancer, and then I saw the VTuber express they didn't want people talking about it. I wanted to respect that, but I was being lazy and planned to delete the private video. It wasn't uploaded yet. When I had time, since sometimes deleting a vid takes a while. My editor posted the video without me knowing. He noticed I hadn't scheduled out a daily video and thought that video was good to post. The VTuber was upset, and he changed the title to sound better. It actually sounded worse because English isn't his first language and made the VTuber even more upset. I don't blame him at all. He's human and makes mistakes like the rest of us. I was asleep the entire time and woke up at 4 p.m. to a shitstorm, and I was super confused as to what was happening. Even though the entire situation wasn't my fault, it's a reflection of the Cat and Chat brand, and I immediately took down the video and paid the VTuber compensation for their troubles for the video being up for 6 hours. As a brand, things may happen that isn't your fault. It feels unfair to take responsibility for something you didn't 100% cause. But that's how you can be the bigger person and right the wrongs for affected parties. That led Alicia to quote retweet the Dokibird document and call out Kat's comment directly. Be the bigger person? You absolute fuckhead. You clickbaited my cancer. The internet called you out, so you changed the title to saying that I'm in remission, which caused people to think I beat it. Then after you got double backlash, you reached out to me blaming your editors. You took zero accountability and gave me the ad ref to the video because you monetized my cancer. You're not a good person, stop acting like it, even though the entire situation wasn't my fault is stupid. You directly say here, I wanted to respect that, but I was being lazy and planned to delete the video since it takes time. You can literally delete a video from a mobile device. Stop lying. It's not like I'm not a YouTuber. At Katliente, it's outrageous you knew and still let it go out. After that, Alicia even responded to Kat's video comment with her own reply, which Kat then deleted. So Alicia decided to make her YouTube video explaining everything and clarifying the events. She only did that as a response to Kat doubling down repeatedly. Katliente then posted a public Twitter statement repeating the same points. She was asleep when the video went live, her editor uploaded it with the clickbait title, then changed it to remission due to him being ESL, and she deleted the video once she woke up, paid Alicia for damages, apologized, and thought it was settled, but felt the need to clarify because of rumors surfacing again. But this next part made things even worse. While trying to defend herself publicly, Kat made a critical mistake. In her tweet, where she included proof of payment to Alicia, she failed to properly censor Alicia's real name. That's right, Katliente accidentally doxed her. The same person who went out of her way to blur everybody else's name in the Doki Google Doc, well, besides Dokibird, half-assed the censoring when it came to Alicia, further adding to the distress. That's when Alicia came back with this tweet. And yeah, she didn't hold back. "Hey there, idiot, it's me, the person you exploited. Don't worry, I showed all the screenshots in my video. It doesn't save your ass. You said in your own words I was too lazy to take it down, and that taking down videos take time. You are a liar. You can pretend and act like your editor is the problem, but you are. You are a terrible person who thinks posting about my cancer is fine, who chose to bring me up again to defend yourself when slamming on Dokibird. You posted a video clickbaiting my cancer on your channel. You had it changed to me being in remission. You bashed Doki for her blaming others. You are a hypocrite. Trying to call out someone else while you are the problem is just classic you though. Also, all screenshots, honey, I can provide them since they are in my response video. My screenshots also include the comment I made that you deleted, so cheers. You posted about my channel being hacked a week after I already got it back. You made the video after I already called out other channels for clickbaiting my cancer. You even stated you knew before the video uploaded that I don't want people calling me the cancer VTuber, yet you made the video. Fuck off. Also, you of course didn't want the situation to be public because you looked like shit. Lamau, I chose not to say anything, but then you brought me up to seem like a good person when people got upset about you in a relation to Dokibird. This is on you for making me step up. Obviously, Alicia couldn't speak about the docs immediately without drawing more attention to it, which put her in a rough spot. Facing mounting public pressure as people were noticing the docs and pointing it out, Kat then quietly deleted the tweet the following day. On a brighter note, Alicia recently shared that she's now officially beaten cancer, and that's something we can at least all celebrate. And this isn't the first time Katliente has upset the VTuber community. When the community pushed back after one of her videos led to creators being harassed and losing their platforms, she bragged on her channel, saying they couldn't even put a dent in me.
Be mean. They're not big enough to put a dent in me.
What especially frustrates the VTuber community is that she doesn't seem to have made any effort to understand or connect with us. While most of us got into this space out of passion, she started with general content creator advice and only pivoted to VTuber coverage after her video on the small Lola situation went viral. Of course, there's nothing wrong with pivoting your channel towards content that performs better, but the VTuber community is fiercely protective when it feels like outsiders are exploiting the space for personal gain. Simply put, while many facecam creators have been warmly welcomed and are now beloved pillars of the community, like Coefficient or Nax, Kat's attempts have come off as soulless and disrespectful, time and time again. Thank you so much for watching. That's all I've got for you guys today, and a massive shout out to everyone who helped me put this together, especially the folks in my Discord server who are keeping me sane through this absolute rabbit hole. If you want to join the madness, we're over at discord.gg/Rima. And if you've enjoyed the video, smash that like button, hit subscribe so we can hit that 100k subscriber milestone. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can support the channel on Patreon for bonus content. And yes, patrons get their names immortalized in the bloopers of my videos forever. So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Shit, I gotta wait. Katliente immediately framing it as something that went was. The video argues that the PC was valued at 300 and 500 British pounds. I am so bad at reading numbers. Only 3 items were shown in JBP. I'm just gonna say British pounds. The email... Why do I say it so French? With only 355 numbers. At this point, Dokibird responds, stating that she's willing to raise the budget to 7.4 US. Numbers, Rima, numbers. But some select few weren't. Dog. Communicated with in a way I expect. I have no voice left. Where she had uploaded a video that clickbaited creator Alicia X. I can't speak and I'm dizzy.